Programmatic pioneers and our panelists. I'd like to thank you for joining our session today. As mentioned, today's session is keeping your programmatic strategy agile as Europe transitions to the new normal. Now, I'm going to call on our first panelists to introduce themselves. I know that two of them have joined us so far and that one of them is just trying to get into the session now, but I'd like each panelist to introduce themselves and just to answer the question for me in regards to a bit of a short update on the considerations around brand safety that have required them to agilely adapt their business and marketing strategies due to the impacts of the pandemic. And I'm going to call on Karin to begin with.
Hello, morning, everybody. As you already mentioned, my name is Karin Meraner. I'm responsible for the media and planning media budget GSK for the DACH market, Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. And focus, of course, relies on programmatic advertising. Shown over the last year how this really changed when we are looking at the whole media mix itself.
Perfect. Thanks, Karin. And Mazen.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Mazen Mroueh. I'm based in the Netherlands. I work for Friesland Campina as the head of the digital factory, Singapore and Southeast Asia. And I'm also leading global digital media and MarTech for Royal Friesland Campina globally. First, thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this chat with all of you. I think it will be insightful.
Perfect, thanks, Mazen. And I know that you're based in Lebanon this morning, so if you do cut out, I'm sure that you'll be able to jump back in, because I know that you've had a few power issues recently. But it's great to have you both on board this morning. I know that Teresa is running a little bit behind due to some technical issues, so we'll introduce her when she joins the session. So, you know, when we're talking about programmatic strategy, we all know that the pandemic has really affected media plans and really our ability to be agile. Now, I know specifically in the UK at the moment, as we have started to get back to a bit of normality, media plans and budgets, we are seeing, you know, starting to really ramp up again. But with the global clients that I work with specifically, it is quite difficult when it comes to being agile in that plan, as we think about the different markets in Europe and the different stages that they're at the moment in regards to the pandemic, either coming out of the pandemic or still where other markets were a few months ago. So I think, you know, let's start with the first question to Mazen. You know, at what point should brands reevaluate their current messaging and ask, is this the path we should follow for the long term as we begin to move past the pandemic?
Well, for me and Friesland Campina, we believe that content optimization should be always on. It's not a point where you stop and reevaluate and then you take some time off and then you do it. No, it should be part of your, you know, since the same as you do a yearly strategy and a yearly media plan, then you need to keep on just focusing on content optimization, focus on data learnings, on insights based on previous campaign. Also, you need to take your market research to improve the content, because without data or testing A and B or whatever, then you can really not optimize and get better. And now brand messaging should be also focused on the era where we move fast, because you know the attention metrics are decreasing. So today, of course, you have mobile, you have two mobiles, you have distraction everywhere. And that's where we really need to focus on changing our strategy, I would say. And I would definitely share some quick tips. I recommend to be agile, to be flexible, brief and focused, and offer something for the consumer that will give them immediate value. And at the end, it should be also a magic recipe between all of this. And once you really find your optimal point, then you can start doing it at scale with personalization, and that's where you can really make it work.
I definitely agree. I think when we look at content specifically and data in combination, I know one of the things that we did as a company, DoubleVerify, at the start of the pandemic was really kind of evaluate how we actually categorize COVID content as an example. So, you know, generally COVID content had a negative connotation to it, but we know specifically that, you know, there's plenty of content out there regarding working from home, regarding exercising throughout the pandemic that, you know, people were avoiding, and that was really affecting publisher relationships across multiple markets. And I think really understanding your markets and where they are and what kind of content that you are targeting is really key. Now, I know that Teresa has joined us, so welcome, Teresa.
Yes, hello everybody. Sorry for the technical issues.
No problem at all. Teresa, do you want to introduce yourself quickly? And then the question that we're asking, and I'll ask you to ask it, just answer this at the same time, is, you know, at what point should brands reevaluate their current messaging and ask, is this a path that we should follow long term as we begin to move past the pandemic?
Sure, thank you, Wayne. Yes, so I'm Teresa Fusaro, and I lead a team called the Digital and Social Media Platform at Nestlé, which represent the technology organization and a digital technical hub for Nestlé. So we'll be able to share the perspective on how, as an organization, we use the technology to ensure safe and quality digital media operations through the pandemic time. And to your question, Wayne, you know, on technology perspective, I could share a few initiatives maybe that we have put in place through 2020 to kind of understand how to adapt media operations and precisely the creative aspect maybe to what consumers were expecting in these difficult times. One thing that we really, you know, enhanced a lot is our brand safety and ad verification measurement. We really mandated all, you know, the brand safe control through the pandemic through to all markets and brands with a strong mandate to pause all the media operation that cannot be controlled on a brand safety, let's say, point of view. To ensure all our media investment was going through safe context. And another, let's say, initiative in terms of understand how to adapt maybe the creative messaging was about social listening. Social listening was really a you know, a focus through 2020, not only in terms of ensure we have in-house the best technology possible to listen to what consumers are saying, but also ensuring we have more resources in terms of we really you know, enhance our global hub focused on providing a service on social listening to market with more resources, more infrastructure, better technology to ensure we could really, you know, prevent any crisis in terms of brand safe and understand what consumers were looking for. For example, there were we detected some nice interesting things like the spike in mentions related to what do you say, probiotic or vegetable proteins. So really things that helped us to understand how we should evolve in terms of offering new products, tailored messages about topics that really concern the consumers through this, let's say, very special times.
Absolutely. I think social listening is a really great indicator of where a market is at specifically and does allow you to really kind of tailor those messages. And I think, you know, when we think about, you know, the current times that we're in and how important it is at the moment to ensure that the messaging is really on point, I think that is, you know, a great aspect for our listeners and audience to really focus on. Just to mention for those listening into the session today, if you do have any questions for our panelists, please do put them in chat and we'll try and answer them as we can as we go through.
Wayne, can I just add something, because it perfectly fits what Teresa just said. What I would say, like based on when you're doing social listening, so these are the real insights you back before social listening was possible. You were waiting for like a year or even longer. So that was not agile at all. And then you could also not tell if it's like still relevant anymore. And what we could see is like for like together with like COVID, like health, like caring about ourselves became so huge. So all the search terms increased like heavily. Everything was related, really everything, to COVID. Sometimes also like really funny combinations. But in the end, like a big finding we had, that was like mouthwash. Like for Aquafresh mouthwash, it's a product that is like sold by GSK globally. We like the sales really increased because of like that, like the moment where you really want to be careful. We are wearing a mask the whole day, so you don't want to inhale bad taste. So for the first time ever, like people are like really recognizing that sometimes that was a problem for somebody else, but now it's like the problem for everybody. It also sounds funny because it was obviously before, but before it was something maybe for elderly people, and now it's something for like everybody, and everybody using it. So really like huge change when we're like just looking at mouth wash or mouth health. And then same also applies to, like you were saying before, exercising at home, which before like everybody was kind of too tired to do it or not interested in it. So when you think about Voltadol, which is like helping you when you're like have pain, also there we saw that people are doing so much exercises at home just in the beginning. then like, it was less that like everybody was buying Voltadol because of all their like yoga and aerobics that they did at home. So that was really something you could not know before, and then really had to be adapted. What like how will it go, or where will it lead?
Yeah, it's very true. I think most of us started with the best intentions when it came to exercising. I bought a few machines for home and they're all collecting dust at the moment. No, those are really good points. Thank you for the interjection there. Let's move on to the next question. So with many brands hyper aware of the time, cost and difficulty of harmonizing their communications in the current climate, how can we effectively orchestrate cross-channel strategies? And I'm going to start with Karin on that one.
I'm going to continue then. What I liked is that you were like saying already in the question, orchestrate, because that is like the hint to the orchestra. And if all the channels, like all the media channels, are an instrument, if there is one missing, it's not a good sound in the end. So I really truly see it like this. Every instrument, every media channel has a different role, and you cannot replace it. So if you think about discussions like really long ago, where like, oh yeah, TV will replace newspaper, internet will replace TV. No, there was no replacement happened at all until now. It's just even more fragmented, and there are even more channels where like consumers are, and then of course also like advertisement should be. So it's really like an orchestra in the end now, and maybe it's 100 instruments, 100 channels, or maybe less. But I also think that there will be more channels coming up, and then it's really important to find the right mix, like looking at the consumer, like looking at the target group and the touch points where I can actually tackle them, and not seeing it just as like, yes, people are not reading any news, people are not on internet because they're elderly, for example, which is still something I don't know about the others, but something that every week somebody's like challenging that. Yeah, it's just like, or also like if you just as a simple example, something new, or it was new a few years ago, like TikTok. Yes, now everybody is also using TikTok. It's not that it's just designed but for younger people. And then it's also funny because everybody always wants to be younger and trendy. So of course, this is like for everybody. In the end, it takes a bit longer, but it does not really mean that there is a dedicated channel for each target group. And in the end, what I'm still struggling would be to measure the mix, because every channel can be measured from themselves. That's like very great. And it's like really, especially when you go into all the digital channels, but the combination is still something which is needed, and kind of like saying which channel is better than the other. It's something which, of course, because every channel has its own role, it's possible. But looking at the mix, the entire mix, and then knowing, okay, this was the good one, that's still something hopefully we're gonna have soon, which I'm like, yeah, struggling sometimes.
I think it's true. I think when you think, you talk about how many channels there are nowadays, and we're not just talking about TV, we're talking about digital channels, social channels, throwing into the mix CTV now, which is obviously a hot topic over the next couple of years. I think, the mixture of the measurement and the data and making those data-driven decisions is really key. I mean, if you think about mobile a few years ago, when everyone was putting mobile on their media plans as a separate line item, but then it was falling off because you couldn't track attribution properly. And nowadays, it's just part of that mix. I think eventually, everybody wants to get to that point where you can measure everything holistically and pull out those insights and really kind of put those media investments through programmatic, and it will distribute it as and where the machine learnings and the data is telling it to go, is going to be really key for the future. Obviously, that's a bit like the holy grail, and hopefully one day we'll all get there. Mazen, feel free to jump in on that question.
Definitely. Well, I'm going to make it a little bit funny as well, and I have 2 points first. First, I want to make sure that we all agree that a silo marketing does not work anymore. No. So today, if you run and that's mainly for the audience, today, if you run a campaign on YouTube, a perfect campaign or anywhere else, you try to convince me for this product, I go search for it and I don't find it, or I find a competitor with a better appealing message, and I might convert to that competitor. So you made a favor for that competitor. For this, the silo does not exist. Now, the point that what I liked about what Karin said, and that's exactly what I had on my mind, is about this whole of orchestra, right? So I'm going to make it very tangible. So you will need a maestro, and that's the brand manager. So you need that person who is going to be the maestro and be able to lead that campaign across different channels. When I say channel, I say the different people playing music and different instruments. You cannot say I want this or that. You just keep on functioning. Now you turn on this, you turn this off, you activate this, and that's how you do it. And then data. Data is very essential, and data are the nodes in front of each machine, in front of each instrument. And that's where you empower the data with those machines and you try to make it work. And of course, the ambiance or the salle or the whole is all about the ecosystem that you use. So machine learning, a scale, different biddable platforms. So my message is clear. You need different aspects, or you need different areas to be able to focus on, to be able to measure an omni-channel campaign. So you need the maestro, you need the data, you need the channels, and you need your media agents to be able to activate. And that's how it works. I'm not saying today just go fully everywhere. I'm only saying start with one, activate another, and activate another based on your brand, based on how much you have money, based on how you are capable of. Then that's you can start. So you can always start small and just keep on adding more and more and more to find what really works for you. And for me, maybe it would be different for Teresa or for Karin, because it's all about your consumer, and that's the consumer journey that you are going to build at the end based on different touch points. She mentioned TikTok. Maybe for me, TikTok doesn't work, and it's not really something for my TA. I'm targeting more older generation that doesn't use TikTok, for example. And that's how, in my opinion, it should be.
So it's really interesting, Mazen, that you mention obviously both the agency and also the brand, and pulling it all together. Where do you think, just to add on to this, where do you feel in-housing comes into this? Because obviously a lot of brands are bringing all of this planning, all of this activation in-house. Do you think it has a place?
Sure. When you go to watch an orchestra, right, there's some you don't see the people which sometimes are in the different level where are under the maestro, those people that help and just do all the other work. I think it's in between. Hybrid model is definitely a big topic, and also I'm coming from an agency, and also I built a small in-housing team at Friesland Campina. I think the concept of hybrid has changed. From people think hybrid, that the hybrid team will take over the media agency, and then you don't need media agency and that's it, your hybrid team will do it. No, the hybrid team can play a role of data activation, data collection, helping in the strategy, helping maybe in the platform relationship, joint business plan. There are many roles of that hybrid team, and you can keep the role of the agency. And if you think that you want to do activation in-house, and the role of the agency would be more strategy, more, they sit on a ton of money, they can do a great partnership. We all know that. So we can really benefit from them in different ways.
Perfect, thank you very much. Moving on to the next question, I'm going to start with Karin on this one. If our governments needed to extend or reintroduce lockdowns or social distancing measures, how would you adapt your media planning to align with changing consumer habits?
I guess like part of the time was already done last year when we first experienced this, and it's something which nobody really saw happen. And so now it's what I like is like the thinking we developed last year, that plans are plans, but plans are there to be changed. And that's something we now truly live, because we saw, okay, even if it's called media planning, it's still something that we are able to change somehow. Mm-hmm. So this like increase on flexibility is helping a lot to really like adjust the plans to the current situation. So if you think about out-of-home advertisement, for example, that's something when people have to stay at home, it's like, yeah, nice, but nobody will see it. So that's something where before agility was not really happened. It was like really stable, but now it's really like agency approaching us and like giving us the time slots where we have to decide if yes or not. And even there, like there are a few, there's always like a week in between where it's still like, let's see the next government decision and then decide. So that's something which was, at least in Germany, not possible before COVID. So that's something which I would really see as a step towards the right direction, because it doesn't really mean that, that the plan has to be executed as it was planned. And I see this as a great advantage in the end, because it's still like there is still a plan needed, because every brand, every target group has its own orchestra. And in the end, it's like, that's their idea, that's the strategy. But the plan has to be adjusted and has to be changed. And I liked what you were saying before, like the programmatic way of thinking. So this is true for all the digital campaigns. And like one dream of myself would be imagining this for all channels, like where you see, okay, this is the target group, this is the asset, and let the computer do what's the best. Like let's be programmatic in the out-of-home channels, let's be programmatic on TVC. And it doesn't mean that we will be jobless or we don't need agencies after this. It just means that we are finally profiting from technology that's already here. We just have to wait until everybody's adapting.
No, I agree. The robots aren't taking over quite yet, maybe some point in the future. Just before I move on to Teresa, I'm just going to ask a bit of an extension question on that, Karin, because we've had a few questions from the audience around brand suitability. So we're also being asked, in relation to your answer, what are the best practices you would recommend when reviewing kind of brand suitability settings when you have to be agile?
Should I go for it?
Yeah, go
okay.
For it. In a moment.
Great. I would say I'm really keeping close contact to the agency, and then like counting on relationships as well, because like it's in the end, it's like human being responsible for deadlines. So that's helpful. It's not like the most scientific advice, but it's something in the end, like, which is like maybe even more helpful, like having short lines and explaining how important this will be, being in contact and like speaking openly. The more transparent you can be to your agency, the more transparent you can be to any publisher, the better. So I would say that's also something which increased like understanding of each businesses in the end.
Yeah, I think that's really key. I mean, a lot of the clients that I speak to, both agency side and also client side, I think it's really important to understand that, you know, when it comes to brand suitability, when we're agile, I think, you know, we need to protect those publisher relationships as well, because, you know, that is really key. You know, we have to look after that side of the business on the supply side as well as the demand side. I'm going to come to Teresa now. Teresa, just to reiterate the first question, you know, with brands hyper aware of the time costs and difficulty of harmonizing their communication. Oh, sorry, wrong question. Let me come back to that. It's the one around government needing to extend and reintroduce lockdowns and social distancing measures. How would you adapt your media planning?
So in terms of media planning, I'm not the best person to speak about media planning, but what I can share is what we have observed globally, from a global team in the pandemic time, when the government really enhanced this confinement measurement, is that our media spend definitely did not reduce. For the nature itself of food and beverage category, which is, the consumption in houses where it happens. Really, we have not seen any significant reduction in media investment. And indeed, we have just announced one of the best first quarter in years as a group. So definitely, the results are demonstrating that also our media investment has been sustainable through the 2020 in spite of the situation, and this paid out. The way we are, operating media is changing in the sense that we are going back a little bit also to the question about in-housing. Of course, as a group, we still work with media agencies to manage our media operation, but we have really strong in-house principles when it comes to say to media agencies how we want things to be done, to set the rule of the games. So we have a strong internal principle that is resumed in what we call the Nestlé Media Responsibility Plan, where we set our media buying standard hygiene principle when it comes to media delivery, which technologies agency have to use, which are the top SSP or publisher where they have to invest. We really want to enhance the transparency and measurability of our media operations. We build, an internal technology and internal dashboard to index our media operations called the Digital Media Best Performance Index to really enable the conversation with media agency about how well and until which point they are respecting these media principles that we have set up internally to protect our brand and the quality of our media. And we've also, let's say, set up a new currency to enable this conversation with our agencies. We now speak about quality CPM, the QCPM, and no longer just the CPM, as a way, to see how how strong is the hygiene and the quality of our media. So we don't see media investment reducing, but we see a strong trend towards, hygiene, quality of how we operate media, and definitely as, really maybe more extreme measure, pause or stop any activity which cannot be measured on a quality, on a brand safety point of view. This is, let's say, the direction we are taking in terms of global, guiding principle on media operations.
Perfect, thanks, Teresa. Now, panelists, we've got about 5 minutes left. We've had a question from the audience. Teresa, I'm just going to ask you to elaborate on this. I've got a bit of context on this myself. We're being asked, is contextual targeting becoming a good option for personalization? And what impact might this have on marketers' brand safety and brand suitability strategies? Now, I know from my perspective, because in DoubleVerify's portfolio, we have a very advanced product when it comes to contextual called Authentic Brand Safety, which is probably one of the most advanced pre-bid products. And that can be married up with contextual targeting to make sure that you're avoiding non-brand safe and non-brand unsuitable content at page level while still being able to target those kind of new audiences at scale. Now, with contextual targeting being such a hot topic, Teresa, are you guys at Nestlé kind of talking about what's going to happen in the future in regards to targeting and the demise of third-party cookies?
Of course, everybody is talking about it, right? Yes, there are big discussion going on with all our main players on the technology vendors, media agencies to set up the scene for 2022, for the future in the cookieless world. There are many initiatives going on, still, things to define. Personally, I agree that the revival of contextual targeting will be one of the key trends, in revival, because we see, we have now more technology to do contextual better than 15 years ago, maybe, but it is definitely something that will, will be a strong trend in light of the new privacy regulation and so on. Together, for me, with another way of engaging with consumers to get their data, to reimagine the relationship with consumers when it comes to collect consumer data. For me, the other big trend is about value exchange, as the brands need to be ready to provide some real value to consumer for them to provide to share their information. Is no longer going to be free, but we have to be able as brand to provide added value to and some tangible value exchange for consumers to share their information.
Absolutely. I think that education piece, we've been doing it for years around the value exchange of the internet, and that nothing is ever really free. Even when it comes to, giving up your personal data, most people still, don't realize that, that is what makes it all go round in the long term. So just to finish up on the final question, I know, Teresa, you've more or less just answered this, so I'll come to Mazen next. What words of advice, with the demise of third-party cookies coming in the next year or so, what words of advice can you share with our audience to be prepared and remain agile during this digital transformation?
Of course. Well, I will make it short because I know I have a few minutes left. I think the first one you mentioned, and Teresa did as well, education and knowledge is key in this era. I think the first tip that I would really give to all the audience is to just educate yourself, keep on reading, on studying, join based on which part of the industry you are. You can join GARM, WFA, IAB. There are a million of really groups where you can really take part and share your voice as well and try to change how the industry works. And the second really tip is start now. So contextual is perfect. Building your first party data as well. But the most important is failing. So start now, fail a little bit, learn, and then do it again, maybe with a different partner, with a different way, and then keep on learning. Don't wait for cookieless world next year. Don't wait to see what other brands will do or other colleagues or whatever. Just do it yourself and fail. It's okay. We all fail in life, and just learn and then stand up and do it again. And